Hey, real quick, unless you grew up with Primavera or own Oracle stock, or maybe both, you probably wish your schedule was easy to understand and interact with. This is where Planera comes in. Planera is a modern CPM planning and scheduling platform built for construction teams. Real-time collaborative, visual, making it easy to plan work while staying powerful enough to manage complex schedules. There are better ways to plan, and Planera is one of them. Check it out. Cameron Page, thank you for joining us on Construction Conversations. How you doing, man?
I am doing great. How are you guys?
Doing pretty well.
It's Friday.
You
It's
know,
Friday before Christmas, and I'm not gonna lie, someone sent a meme to me of like you thought the week before Christmas was gonna be really
I
relaxing,
saw
but
that too.
it turned out like the following image, and it was like this British naval captain walking downstairs
I
while
saw that one too.
cannonballs and just wood flying everywhere. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much been this week. This has been the most insane week ever. Yeah,
You
but
also
hey,
just dated
you're
the
not living.
podcast, Lars, which now puts a time constraint on how
Ah,
quickly I need to produce this podcast, which is not
such a
ideal. So
rookie move. Damn
please don't
it.
do that in the future.
Ever,
Uh,
ever.
but Cameron, I'm excited for this episode or this conversation, mainly, well, for a variety of reasons. We've had a couple conversations about what you've been building with ClearStory and your kind of path to building ClearStory. And it's kind of crazy. Like if you looked at just your resume and your LinkedIn, like if you're gonna design and craft a founder for a construction tech company, it would pretty much be you. Like you're kind of crafted in the lab a little bit. Like so carpenter, intern, assistant superintendent, and then PM on the GC side, and then founder CEO of a construction tech company. Was that always going to be the path? You were like you're just building up to
Yeah,
the tech company,
obviously, yeah, that was the playbook.
obviously.
It's like that's how you get into tech, right? Is you start
That's right.
as a carpenter. Yeah,
That's right. That's normally what they say.
yeah. No, the main path there was before all of that, I was always like interested in building stuff, and even as a kid, I was like weirdly kind of like into architecture and buildings and things like that. And so I was a decent student in high school, but Cal Poly is like a pretty tough school to get into. And I through a college counselor at my high school, they told me that, hey, there's this thing called construction management. Because you're interested in buildings and things like that, you should consider construction management. And by the way, it's one of the easier majors to get into at Cal Poly. And I was like,
Unrelated.
sweet, this is
Tell me
this
I got a
this aligns
chance.
perfectly.
Yeah, this aligns perfectly.
And so both my parents went to Cal Poly as well. And so I was like, all right, well, let's that sounds awesome. Let's do that. And so I got accepted. And so that summer, I was like, if I'm someday going to manage construction, I probably should have done construction at some point in my life. And so in Sacramento, there was a like apprentice program for high school kids to try and get them into the trades. That my mom had like a friend who was involved in it, and so that was kind of how I got into becoming a apprentice carpenter. It was during the boom days in all of construction countrywide, but especially in Sacramento, they're building tons of stuff out in the foothills. So I got thrown, literally the first couple of weeks, I was like actually sweeping the shop floor, like the most cliche thing ever to start your career. But then I actually got to go out to job sites and be on a framing crew, which it totally like gives me a great perspective on the industry that I'm really glad I got to be able to do to see how a field crew operates, how people talk to each other, how trades interact on a job site, and then particularly how the field views the office, which is, the age old dynamic in construction. So obviously later in my career, when I was on the office side, I felt like I had a good way of empathizing and communicating with the field teams that were the ones actually doing the work. So yeah, that's how I fell into that whole journey. How I got into tech is a totally different story, but that's at least how I got started.
So okay, so this you do have the perfect arc, like you said. You were literally sweeping shop floors, and so that's it's a nice completion of the arc. So you spent when did you start ClearStory?
We launched it in 2018, and I started kind of working on it nights and weekends, basically probably like the beginning of 2017. So it probably took about a year and a half to actually one, develop the software to prove that it was actually something that was feasible. And then part of it was just me getting the courage to actually quit my job and take the leap.
Yeah. When you were going through these different roles in your earlier career, were you naturally entrepreneurial and that way oriented? Like were you designing kind of apps in your basement, and this was kind of the third string of many previous failures, or was this like your first swing at it?
I had dabbled in trying to create some like side businesses and side hustles that were, mostly like learn by doing type of things.
Let's talk about let's talk about the weirdest
Side
one.
hustles. Let's get into side hustles here.
Yeah. So basically, with a friend of mine, we lived in the same apartment complex, and we would go in the hot tub and just brainstorm business ideas. And
Oh, that's
it
where
was,
good
Okay.
ideas come from.
This is
of
it. Let's
course.
go. Let's go. So you're ripping with your buddy in the hot tub. What'd you guys come up with?
And so we basically challenged each other not to start a business, but just to see if we could like create a product. And I
Hmm.
honestly can't remember the one that he came up with, but it was during Movember, and it was like right when the iPhone came out. And I was like, why not have a iPhone case that had a like mustache comb that would pop out of it? It's
Yes.
Oh
like
yeah.
the dumbest product of all time. And I was like, you know what? We basically challenged each other of like, let's just see if we can go like source and create a product. So I went on like Alibaba and found a Chinese manufacturer to create these. And we actually like launched a website and built these. And it was truly the dumbest idea. But we actually sold quite a few of them. But as it turns out, creating an iPhone case company is like painfully hard because the next generation of iPhone case comes out and your product is like obsolete.
100%.
That was truly not about trying to create a sustaining business. It was more just
Yeah.
like exploring to see what it would take to actually create something. So it was like good, valuable lesson. Obviously, it had nothing to do with technology or anything like that. I think, but the entrepreneurial vein, yeah, my dad started a graphic design studio in the probably like late 70s, early 80s, and he ran it for 35 years. And so I think that was for me the biggest sort of just like pattern recognition of like, hey, this is possible. You can actually start a company from scratch and run it for a long time. Obviously, his graphic design studio wasn't like venture backed or anything like that. Um, but it was also interesting to see like that type of industry, which I think we'll talk about later in the conversation here, is him starting a graphic design studio in the 70s. Like the types of graphic design they were doing completely changed every 10 years, right? Like they were doing type layout and typeset, and the only way to get anything in print was to like collaborate with a printer. And then all of a sudden the computer came out and laserjet printers came out, and that he had to reinvent his business. And then the internet came out, and then they had to design websites. And I can't even imagine what graphic design is changing through today, right? But it just sort of showed how you have to be able to adapt and like forward think and things like that. So that was sort of like a bit of my inspiration on the entrepreneurial side. And then I also just saw a lot of my friends in the industry who had started their own subcontracting companies and taken a leap in that vein. So that was like what gave me the inspiration to go down the entrepreneurial side of the journey. And then on the tech side, it was just about seeing a lot of these cool tools come out while I was in the field, like PlanGrid and Building Connected, and a lot of other tools that I was a power user of. And then I looked up like who the founders were, and I was like, wait, if these guys can quit their jobs and do this, like maybe I can. And so that was, I think, a lot of the idea behind it.
I love that. So yeah, so PM at DevCon, and you maybe kind of see this gap. Did you see a specific gap? I guess like that. How did you go from PM having some kind of insights around what might work, what might not work in the industry, to I'm going to jump all in? Was this a side thing that you were doing for 6 months and then you got some traction and that gave you the confidence to make the move? Like, walk me through the early days in 2018. Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. Well, the ideation side of it was initially I had a friend who we would like brainstorm ideas with, and he came from the subcontracting side, and we were like brainstorming all sorts of different you know construction or even non-construction, tech ideas. And at one point he mentioned like, hey, why not an app for T&M tickets? Like my company does it on paper. Couldn't we just build an app that does that? And I was like, holy crap, that actually is a huge pain point because, I see it from 30 subcontractors who all do it on triplicate carbon copy paper. But as I started like thinking through it, it's like T&M is just one part of the challenge, and really it's change order exposure more broadly. Like how do I as a GC know everything that's out there that all of my subcontractors have sent me, and then all of a sudden, it was morphing into like a much bigger platform and bigger problem set to go solve. And so by the time I actually hired my first engineer, that was the plan, was to build a full, really change order collaboration software with the core product being a digital cloud-based change order log that could be shared between parties. And so instead of like emailing a change order, you just submit it through ClearStory, and the GC automatically has a real-time view of everything each subcontractor has sent to them. And then for the specialty contractor side, I had a unique view, like every PM does, to see how all your subcontractors do these workflows. And the insight there was just like, oh, every single one does it differently. And it's mostly done on Microsoft Word or Excel, or, if it's in the field, it's paper. And so really the other challenge with change orders is just time to visibility. If we have a design change that I need to communicate to the client, I'm relying on my trade partners to give me that response as fast as possible. But they're challenged by the tools they're operating in and how they communicate it back to me and all that kind of stuff. So that's really where the idea for the especially contractor side of our software really came into full fold was, take the T&M workflow for change orders. Okay, they got to get that document signed in the field, but what's the next step? Well, the next step is they have to get that document back to the office. What's the next step? Well, then they got to scan it if they're doing it on paper. Hopefully they're doing it on a fillable PDF form or something. But then they have to manually transcribe all the data from each T&M ticket into a pricing spreadsheet or into a software system, create the price for the change related to the T&M work. Then they have to PDF that. Then they have to stitch together the full document. Then they got to email it to me. Then they got to update their change order log. So really it's just about mapping out every step that goes into this manual, each change order workflow. We really mapped out what we thought was the industry best practice in every manual step. And then it was just kind of like reverse engineering. It's like, what can we automate? And so that was like how we kind of came up with the foundation for the workflows and the ideas that would go into it. Hiring engineers was like a whole different journey for me. I thought it was going to be, so I hired an offshore engineering team to start, and they kind of sold me on, this collaborative, partnership where they'd help me map out the product and all this kind of stuff. And then we go build it. And when I engaged with them, they kind of just started building it. And, I thought it'd be more like a design build approach, and they thought it'd be more like plan spec. And so the way they built it was like totally wrong. And I didn't know how to I knew how to project manage. I didn't know how to product manage. Right.
Yeah.
And,
Well said.
so it was extremely painful. I spent about a year and a half. Candidly, I spent basically all my savings on it. And, but I was committed to doing it, and ultimately got it to a point where it was ready to launch as like an MVP. And that was before I like quit my job. And so, for anyone else who's like thinking about doing this, like, I think I probably did it the right way. I was just transparent. Like I told my company I was leaving to start a software company. I'm not going to a competitor. I'm going to I might fail on my face and come crawling back. But I told everyone I was doing it, and obviously they thought I was insane, understandably. And but even before that, I had to kind of like develop the courage to like actually quit. My wife was kind of instrumental in doing that. She's like, "You've spent how much money doing this? Like, if you don't quit, you got to stop."
Wow.
and
What a woman.
and then I met with a few of my close friends who have their own subcontracting companies. And I remember, one night I was in my friend's kitchen, like showing him the MVP, and I was like, "So what do you think? Should I do it?" And he's like, "You have to do it." He's like, "We need this." He's like, "But you got to do it." So it's good to have those type of friends who can kind of like push you over the edge. And so then I did, and turned the page, and I was off attempting to run a software company.
Man, that is so cool. I mean, the entrepreneurial, maybe we'll call it gene, has been studied a little bit, and there's often some necessary hubris required with going out and thinking you can build something out of nothing. And what I appreciate about your story is obviously there's some insight into maybe some internal natural doubt that was associated with taking that type of risk. Has like as you've like gone from product conception to creating a startup to now kind of scaling a startup, has how have you dealt with that? We've had a couple conversations just about the that element of hubris existing in kind of the founder perspective, and sometimes it not doing a great job of revealing the true path that founders take in building these companies, right? It's just like this hockey stick, like we got the idea, we got funded, and now we're scaling and growing, and obviously it's not that linear. So like what was like after maybe that initial, hey, it's a real thing, has that kind of doubt ever crept back in?
For sure. I think it's imposter syndrome, right? Is
Yeah.
kind of the name of it, and I think every founder goes through it. Even when you're, because as you scale a company, every stage is new, and every company is new. So even the second, third time you've done it, you still have some level of imposter syndrome, right? If it's truly new technology, even if you're a third time founder scaling it, it's the first time the technology is being brought to market. Um, so there's always some degree of imposter syndrome that you have to like work through and battle. And I think the thing I've learned is you have to have some level of conviction around what you're building. And that can come from something like what I did, which is where I lived the challenges. And so I felt like I was a earned expert in the field. But even if you're not, you still have to figure out a way to like develop that conviction. And that's really your backstop for like everything you're doing. And then you have to have a layer of humility to know there's a lot of things you don't know, and you have to be humble about what you don't know and be really eager to learn, and not be afraid to admit what you don't know and what you need to learn. And I think if you can balance those two things, that's really the foundation for continuing on to whatever the next stage might be.
Hmm. Yeah, I had a coffee with Aaron Topston in Chicago recently, and I mentioned that we were going to chat, and he said Cameron Page is the fastest learner he's ever seen, and he was kind of referencing your ability to learn the necessary kind of components of the business at the different stages. And so as you look at maybe that transition from industry to tech, what was maybe that big learning that helped you kind of initially build the foundation of the company?
That's a great question. Love Aaron. Thanks. I'm glad he said that. But I think for me, it started before the software company. I do think that was what helped me to get to where we're at. But for me, it really started when I was in construction. So being a general contractor by default, when you're dealing with trade partners who are experts in their field, you're often the least educated in the room. If you're in an MEP coordination meeting, each of those people are experts in mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
Yeah.
And I kind of made it my goal to try and get as big of an expert as I could be in each of their respective fields. And how I did that was I developed just like really good close friendships with the project managers or the executives in those companies. And I would get lunch with them and I would just pick their brains on, you know, one of my really close friends has a big HVAC company, and I would just have him explain to me, what an air handling unit is, what a VAV is, and I really wanted to learn how these systems worked so that I could hang in these meetings. And I think, just that mindset and that knowledge journey. I was also just like a consumer of books and podcasts, and I did a pretty depressing amount of commuting when I was in my career. I was going across the Bay Area like twice a day, so I filled the time by just listening to audiobooks and things like that. And I was just trying to like It's like, hey, if I'm going to be stuck in my car, I might as well get something out of it. And so, yeah, I feel like doing that kind of forced me to like consume knowledge and
Mm.
distill down information. And then you just get a lot of reps at it because it's what you're focused on. And so I definitely think that's like a foundational skill really for anybody, but particularly if you're going to try and become, an entrepreneur. The faster you can learn and take those learnings and distill them down into your leadership team and your company, the better off you're going to be.
Hmm. Lars, you've built companies on kind of the construction side of this as well as the tech side with Contracts Connected. What does anything stand out to you in terms of the different maybe varieties of leadership required in each?
Um, Cameron, great stuff, dude. I so many, so the imposter syndrome is real, right? But then, I mean, it's just real in like everyday life.
Yeah.
But then when you're cutting $10,000, $20,000 checks every month to pay overseas coders, and you realize you're a project manager, not a product manager, and you're not even happy with how it's turning out, and you're somehow like still like, I got to keep rowing the boat. Like, I got to keep going. But am I crazy? And the answer is yes, you are crazy. But I strongly believe the people that keep their oar in the water and keep rowing the boat, they win. They just,
Yeah.
there's true grit. They win. So um, I don't think there are certain qualities that, Cameron, I hear like, you know, curiosity. I don't hear like an ounce of pride in like, no, I was already 24. I was 24 years old and I had a construction management degree from Cal Poly. So, I wanted the electrical subs and the mechanic, MEP guys to listen to me because I'm really smart. Right. And it's like, no, I don't know what a VAB is. And in fact, I think it's dishonest to the industry to expect a 24-year-old to know that. So how can we make sure people feel comfortable? Like, ask the question. Like, we want you to be an expert, and I would say that you went on that journey to become an expert because you're like, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I better know what the heck I'm doing if I'm gonna like be invited to stay at the table,
Yeah.
and so I'd say that one, that curiosity is so important, and then two, being a quick study because you're asking thoughtful questions, you're inserting yourself in not a prideful way. Awesome. And then it's like you got to be stupid enough to like jump off the ledge, frankly.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh shit, what have I done? And then you're like, I got to keep going. I just got to keep going. And that right there is, I think, such an entrepreneurial, like, what have I signed myself up for?
Yeah.
Oh crap. Yes, this is crazy, but people tell me that this would be helpful. I gotta listen to them. They need this. The community needs this. So,
Did you have kids while you were doing this too?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had three.
and he's
Yeah.
burning through his savings, dude.
That blows my
Burning,
mind.
burning, lighting it on fire.
Just seeing how much food my kids consume, I just watching them eat makes me save more. It's like
No,
it's like my inner my inner
so
saver comes out.
Cameron, you might not know this about Steven, but Steven has like a flock of like 50 chickens to feed his family. That's what's going on in the
I have
clubhouse.
22 chickens and they stopped
Wow.
laying
Kitty,
eggs in the
he's
winter. And so now we're still having to buy eggs, which is a real kick in the pants when you're having to like, lug water out to them
yeah,
and it's 2 degrees in the morning. But,
So you probably went from having too many eggs and now you have none.
yeah,
well, and we're big egg eaters. Like we're consuming 12 eggs a day.
Yeah. Wow.
So
How many
we've
kids
got
do you have?
four little ones, from 1 years old, 2 years old, and then 5 and 7. But this podcast is not about me. One thing I did want to ask you was like, you're coming from a contracting perspective. You start a tech company. Is the culture at ClearStory kind of a hybrid of the two? And I'll give you this context for the question. My last project was in 2016. I left. We were working on a Disney project, and I worked on I joined a data as a service company in Chicago, and I went from like working very long hours, like we all do at the project level, to like showing up at 7, no one's there. There's like kombucha on tap
I love it.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like the tap, everyone's like like having a beer, and then everyone's gone by 5. And obviously, this is it was kind of a different time. It was like 20 whatever 17. Um, but like for me, that was like, wow, this is like what people have actually been doing. That's a really nice life. What is the culture at ClearStory as it relates to like combining those two worlds?
It's a good question. It's what's been really cool is we've balanced hiring people from the industry and then hiring people with outside
Right.
perspective.
Yeah,
I think we recently ran the numbers and 35% of our team members are from mostly commercial construction. And so our customer success team, we only hire people from the industry. And like
100%.
we just found that you can hop on a call and one, you just a different way of empathizing, but you can
yeah,
understand the workflow faster. You can also hold your ground faster when it comes to like handling objections, things like that. And actually most of our sales team, our entire SDR team, but what's been interesting is even within engineering, we actually have a handful of people from the industry. The first engineer I ever hired was actually from a GC here. He had left, gone to a coding boot camp. I met him at an event, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for a job." And I was like,
Well,
"We're solving change orders." And he was like,
hold
what a
on.
"Sweet."
unicorn.
Hold on. I was like, so what did this guy do in his normal day-to-day construction job?
He was a project engineer.
And he was like, I just want to go code stuff.
Yeah,
So funny.
yeah,
It's
It
incredible.
goes back to like how many people just end up in construction and then get stuck.
yeah,
And some of them are like, I was clearly designed to do this, right? This is really good. And then others are like, I don't know how to get out of the matrix. I got to get out of the matrix.
yeah. Well, I think the really good exit path is like, and kind of what we pitch is like, we obviously don't go like poach our customers' people, but we've had a number of our customers people like reach out to us. They're like, "Hey, I'm looking to make a change and I want to get into tech." And the thing they know the best is construction. So it's a
Yep.
natural kind of jumping off point.
100%.
I mean, I
100%.
think more of that kind of cross experience is good for the industry, right? Like as you interact with folks in the field, having like some tech understanding of just how products are built, I think gives people some mutual empathy, which is always good. Um, so Cameron, you're at a stage, 2025, 7 years after kind of the origin of the company. Um, you were at Groundbreak, had a beautiful booth. I hear about you guys quite a bit. You guys are kind of a big deal. So what are the challenges now? How have the challenges evolved from creating something out of nothing, learning to kind of speak the language of a founder to now you're kind of in growth mode with some interesting kind of AI kind of angles happening in the industry. What's it like now?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, right? It's like I have a new layer of imposter syndrome because yeah, I've never been the CEO of a 85 person company with multiple teams and a full leadership team, and obviously you have to just figure that out as you go. But what I have now is a great team of people in the company, a great group of investors. So the layer of support we have is just dramatically different. And I think through the course of the journey, I hired Tom, my CTO, pretty early on in 2019, and that was just like a game changer to find somebody like inside the company with that level of technology experience. I through a total happen chance, like I had a wine delivery delivered at my neighbor's house that I signed for, and I went and knocked on the door because they left me a note, and turns out they both went to Cal Poly, and then it turns out their dad is a CFO in SaaS, and so they connected me with the dad, and now Steve is my CFO, and he's been instrumental in helping me raise capital and manage the finances of the company. So just like once you start committing and going down the journey, you're going to meet and attract people along the way as long as you're, doing things the right way. And so it's like I'm not obviously not doing this by myself anymore. And now all the people we have in the company are awesome as well. Going back to your previous question too about like the culture clash of technology and construction. I think that what's interesting about having that many people from construction in the company is they think of a product roadmap as like a schedule. And they're like, what's the delivery date for this feature? And what's the critical path? And product and engineering people, I've come to learn, just don't quite think about it the same way. So that's been one of the really interesting things to like kind of learn and balance.
Typically that's
But
treated
no,
as like
it's
a blue
yeah,
sky, like a vision document that may or may not ever see the light of day. So that is very interesting. That's a advantage.
yeah, yeah. But I think because of my construction background, we do have a good rigor within the product engineering teams to get pretty close to, high execution, high throughput. But yeah, no, it's a whole new angle. I mean, we're super lucky. We work with most of the big general contractors in the country, and I feel confident because we've got a great customer success team that's helping them deploy the product, and we've got really passionate users and people using the software, and that's kind of the pinch me part is you know uh, thinking about how many people are actually using this product that I
Hmm.
envisioned back in 2017, and so that's actually probably the most cool and kind of surreal experience of starting a company. It's just understanding that every month there's, I think it's like 50,000 change orders are shared on ClearStory, and each one of those has a sender and a receiver, and both are interacting with our system. And it's pretty
Hmm.
cool to think about it that way.
Hey, really quick, there's a lot of noise right now around AI and construction. And if you've listened to the show, I am generally pretty skeptical around any AI that is not focused on leveling up you, the individual. What I appreciate about Trunk Tools is how they're intentionally building human-centric tools. Their focus is on AI that supports the craft and takes the busy work out of your day and helps experienced builders spend more time building. One fact that kind of blew my mind. Do you know that workers on average spend 5.5 hours per week just looking for project data or information out of a typical work week? That's bonkers. I think we can all agree. And if you'd like to learn more about the tool and how Trunk Tools can help you reduce that time, look for the link in the description to visit their website and book a demo.
So with kind of the AI kind of element of the conversation needing to be discussed, where I guess first before we go there, um, you guys are solving for a really critical workflow, kind of driving transparency into kind of both ends of change order management and associated maybe documentation. Um, as you look at maybe the next few years, and not necessarily from a product standpoint, but as we go into this territory where the barriers to entry is much lower, a PE now, instead of going to boot camp, vibe codes his own app in a weekend, and then goes finds like an offshore resource to kind of reinforce the back end architecture. Um, what is what does enterprise tech look like in the coming years? Like, do we is a shift coming?
Yeah, I think the short answer is, expect a lot more startups to pop up because
Yeah.
the barrier to entry I had in 2017 is materially different than the barrier to entry now, at least to get something started. There, like one example, when I first built the software, I was I had the vision that everyone in the supply chain could eventually use ClearStory. But what we started was with the general contractor and the subcontractor. So like the way we architected it, we built like a general contractor, platform where you could log in and see everything that's been sent to you downstream. And then there was a subcontractor portal where you could like create and package your change orders and send them upstream. Right after we launched, all the early feedback was like, this is awesome, but I want to use it upstream with my client and downstream with my subcontractors, or, as a heavy civil contractor. And they're like, I want to use this to create our T&M tags and price those. And I have subcontractors downstream and a client upstream. And so we recognized early on that like we had to kind of re-architect the platform to be a true network. So we spent all of 2019 re-architecting the platform, which was a good
Move.
band-aid to pull off, even
Yeah.
though it was painful because we wanted to
Yeah.
improve like the functionality that we had. Um, and I say that because you're still going to run into challenges like that, even with AI. Even though you can move faster, you're still going to learn as you get customers and have to have that feedback loop. And so I think, again, getting started is going to be a lot easier, but you still have to go sell to those contractors. You still have to get them onboarded. They're still going to take time to their own timeline to deploy the software. And you're still going to have to, rely on those feedback loops to improve your product and make it more, like you said, enterprise ready, things like that. Um, but I would expect more software to be coming out into the market, and I would expect those to have AI first features in the software, which should be
Yep.
exciting for the industry. And I do think, the pattern of people like me coming from the industry just create products, I think is a really healthy and good thing and exciting. And I would encourage people too, like the barrier to entry now is low. So if you have that idea, you can go execute on it and not spend the amount of money and time I spent, um, and take these ideas to life.
Yeah, I love that. Let's take a break and just talk about your personal tech stack real quick. Speaking of AI, because I think I've personally benefited a lot, and Lars and I've talked a little bit about this. I I took a there was a master class. I was gifted a master class membership in it was like end of 2024 for Christmas from my in-laws, and there was an AI like thing there, and I listened to it, and it was really well done. Like it provided some good background on theory, but then like practically this is how to integrate it to your workflow. And then I got an Otter AI license for me and my team, and um, like just having the ability to ask your meeting questions, in perpetuity, and go back and kind of create content from that original txt file was really helpful. So what's your like go-to AI tech stack as a founder in construction tech right now?
Yeah. How much time do we have? Because no, but I'll give you the
Go
high level.
as much
I
as you
think,
want.
yeah, I think the high level is I've applied that same kind of learning mindset to AI. So I would definitely say I'm pretty obsessed like at the moment and trying to go as deep as possible.
Mm,
And definitely thinking about it in two lenses. Like one, what we're doing in our product and platform for our customers, and then what we're doing internally to make us more operationally efficient. And on that side of the table, we use mostly ChatGPT. We use a bunch of other products that have AI in them, but the core one that we've like provisioned for the whole company is an enterprise, version of ChatGPT.
hmm
And then within that though, like you have to like figure out your process and how to best make efficiency gains within those tools. And a lot of that is like
yep.
skill development. So for example, on the product side, I've kind of recently come back into product team. I'm currently like leading our product team. We have like four awesome product managers that are right now reporting to me. And so what we've built out over the last couple of months is we start every new feature with what we call a product brief. So we built out a custom GPT generator to generate product briefs in a consistent
Hmm.
format. Then we built out a product requirements doc GPT, so where you can take the product brief, any other notes or discovery calls, things like that, um, and you can create the rough draft of the PRD almost instantly. What we also use is we're currently using Lovable. We're using other rapid prototyping tools as well, but we basically created a lookalike of our application in Lovable. So each of our PMs vibe codes the feature in Lovable, gets it to an end-to-end working state. Then we prompt Lovable to write a PRD based on everything it learned. So we feed that into the PRD generator. Then we take that PRD and we put it into our team. Some use a tool called RuCode for AI coding. Some use Cursor. Those are the two tools we've
Hmm.
kind of standardized on. But there's like an architect mode in those tools. And so we feed the PRD into those tools and we say, hey, build me a technical approach document for how to go implement this feature. And then we pull that back out. We human review it to make sure that we agree with the technical approach. And then once we go engineer it, like all that stuff is done, tight, dialed, and it's amazing how fast we can code now.
That's really cool.
And then from there we have a knowledge-based GPT, we
Yep.
have a marketing GPT, and so like all that documentation continues to flow downstream to help us create the enablement content and all that kind of stuff. And that's just like in product. So like the ways that you can optimize and operationalize your workflows with these tools is like really
Insane.
imagination is kind of the main limiter.
Can I do this? Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that.
love it.
I love how you walk through that. So we use ChatGPT quite a bit as well within my team, and yeah, you start to realize um, even it can help you write different prompts of how to create different GPTs that you're looking for, right? And so
Yep.
I love that though of looking at it, how you integrate it into these various workflows. Um, what about your personal stuff? Like, are you an Otter AI guy to record meetings, Fireflies, Fathom? I don't know why I'm going deep down here, but like I feel like people need to
Cameron's the guy
know
to
how
talk
this
to.
is.
That's why Cameron's the guy to talk to.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is just became an AI masterclass, Contact
Well, it's
Edition.
funny. It's actually funny you bring that up because I actually feel like that's maybe one of the weaker points. Because like I don't know about you guys, but right now when we hop on a call, there's like five different AI call recorders like
Yeah,
joining every
yeah,
call,
yeah.
and so
They're
I
all like fighting
see,
with each
yeah,
other.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like we were joking, like if no one shows up to this meeting, there's just going to be five AI call recorders
Just
like talking to each other,
that's right.
and we Granola is the one that a lot of our team members are using. That is pretty awesome. So it's like a running history of all, like you were talking about all your notes. On the go-to-market side, we use Gong. So we use Gong pretty heavily for all of our customer success, sales, and out. Like we don't use it for outbound calls actually because that's not legal. But what it's amazing with it is like from there, we have like a what is it called? We have a scorecard. So like, and they have an AI option where you can like precede the AI scorecard items, so like automatically reviews the calls. So again, like the things you can do with some of these tools are just like endless. I think we're onboarding a new AI tool where we've developed like a sales playbook for how to like communicate and talk about ClearStory, and we're going to feed it and train it all that information. So when we hire a new sales rep, they can just have infinite at bats with an AI prospect,
100%.
asking them objection questions and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
It's
Which
the craziest thing. I mean, dude, Steven, would would take you're only limited by you now and your
Yeah,
ideas. It's not even like resources and money. It's just crazy how
I know.
much you can do with a tiny budget.
yeah,
I mean, my wife runs a little co-op school here with in the community here in our Powhatan area in Virginia, and it was I was kind of going through the beginning of my AI journey earlier in the year, and I kind of walked her through a few of things that I was doing, and man, she's just taking it and run with it, and it's crazy to see, yeah, just how approachable it is, and all the different ways that you can get value from it. Um, I love granola, by the way. I was a big Otter AI fan, and then someone put me onto granola.
I
Dude,
haven't
Lars,
heard
if you're not
of it.
if you're not using granola, just stop.
Just give
Like
up. Just give up and go
it's
home.
so
I'm out.
much
Say
better than
bye.
whatever you're.
I'll find a bridge.
But yeah, granola's great. All right, so that was really fun. I feel like we could do a whole episode just on the personal. So here's a derivative of that category of question. I have a personal thesis that we spend too much time talking about B2B tech in construction and not enough about B2C. And I think the next wave of what's going to be focused on with how approachable building these apps is more B2C tech that helps individuals level up and become more valuable to the project, company, etc. Um, one, maybe respond to the thesis, and then two, do you see a world where ClearStory creates a derivative of your product line that is B2C oriented to help individuals? And there's a lot of like conflicts with how that works with your product line, but you understand the question, I think.
yeah, I think so. I think the way that would manifest for us is more on like the training. We rolled out a top 10 general contractor a couple of years ago, and one of our customer success people, came from an even bigger general contractor, and he was kind of like an early champion of our software, and then like reached out to us and was like, hey, I want to, I kind of think about making the change. So he ended up joining. And when we rolled out across that company, one of the executives there said, this actually feels like we're getting cost consulting services on how to like run best practices on change orders. Like this is like the software is great, but like the way you're rolling this out is awesome. And I think, with any of these like focused solutions like ours, and even like the broader based platforms, I do think there's like a huge element of like training beyond, right now we have like a knowledge base and we have a way of generating like SOPs for customers. But I think on like the individual level, there's an opportunity to be like, hey, here's the ClearStory masterclass in change order management.
It's interesting because when you think about going to university in construction management, like did your construction management courses teach you how to do best practices in change order management?
No.
Nope. And did you actually learn best practices from the people that you work for? Probably not, right? Maybe 0.1% at each. And then all of a sudden you're exposed to all these other ways and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? So again, Stephen, we're getting back into that lack of standardization, lack of like what's kick-ass structure these companies to just plug into. And where I think this whole like transition is occurring again, imagine being a 60-year-old, 80, 100-year-old company and trying to change a process in your company
Yeah.
versus, hey, I'm just going to go start a construction company. I'm going to plug into some amazing tools that give me structure out of the gate. They're best in
Yeah.
class. And I know which one I want to be or the one I want to work for
Yeah.
versus, yeah, like, well, this is how we figured it out in 1962 with Susie, and she was really good. Susie was great. So we don't want to touch, she still comes into the office. She get her feelings hurt.
Susie's
Yeah.
great.
And even if they have Susie, right? Like a lot of times it's just learn by doing, and every team kind of does things differently. And I do think that's where like not to plug ClearStory, but like tools like ours do kind of shine to help drive a consistent process across the company. But even beyond that, just like project management skills and leadership skills and communication skills, those are like you're not really going to have a software tool that delivers like a workflow best practice. Like that's what we help with. But I think those types of skills, I think companies are thirsty to give those types of things to their people in a better way. And we work with lots of companies that are big that have really good training and I think do a good job of it. But I think easier ways for the mid-sized contractors to access things like that could really go a long ways.
It's the leveling of the playing field, right? Because if you're, three-letter construction company that's invested millions of dollars into your knowledge base versus, again, I'm just a small little regional guy that does TIs. They both have a desire to standardize and provide resources to their employees. And I think about like how by just doing action in a company, that knowledge base is created that then those new employees can interact with. That's powerful. Hey, how have we
Hmm.
historically done this, right? Or who should be getting this or what? Granted, again, you're not really humanizing and developing teams with that, but you're at least building a knowledge base and a resource on a playbook. Because a lot of companies never spend the time to do that. They never have the time or the resources. It's expensive. Yeah.
So I know we're getting to
Oh,
the end of our time, Cameron, and I want to be sensitive to your time. What is the book you most gift to others? Is that a good one,
That's a
Lars?
good
Is that
question.
right? Okay.
Cameron, Stephen always does this. He asks these off the wall questions right at the end. He makes the guests feel super
That's what
uncomfortable.
that, that's Lars's
Inside
Yeah,
joke.
role. It's
Inside joke.
normally when there's
Inside
only
joke.
like half a minute left. Sorry. Ed,
it's a good
do you,
question. Man, like I think there's two lenses of that. There's what's my favorite book that I recommend the most, and then what do I gift the most? I do really love gifting books to people. I think it's just like a cool thing to do, right? But I think the book that I recommend the most is Shoe Dog, which is like the history of Nike, particularly the audio version where Phil Knight like reads the beginning of it. It's just like an inspirational story, and it has nothing to do with like the big version of Nike. It's just all the early years of him grinding away for like over a decade to start that company.
Do you think he had imposter syndrome?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And he surrounded himself with good people, right? He
Yeah.
had, the people from um, the university, and and he had the conviction, right? Because he was a runner, so he knew the shoes he was building and stuff like that. That's like my favorite book. I'm trying to think, there was one I gift the most, but I would have to think more on that.
Here's another one. Besides this podcast, obviously, what is your most listened to podcast?
Ooh,
Do
that's
you
a good
probably
question.
listen? What do you listen to?
Yeah, it's funny. I probably there's two. I listen to the All In podcast. I love
That's a
and
good
hate that
one.
podcast, but I
Yeah.
really enjoy it because they every week they talk about current events. So I think it's a great way to
Yeah.
stay in the know on
Just
technology.
yeah.
Um, so I listen to that one. The other one I listen to is called My First Millions, which just sounds like a weird name.
It's a great show.
But it's just yeah, it's a business podcast, and it's actually really funny. They the uh, the host of the podcast one week was talking about going to his daughter's dance recital, and I've been listening to this podcast for years. And the way he was talking about, so they break down businesses on that podcast and really try and reverse engineer them, or they get really good founders on. So he's breaking down the business of this dance studio, and I was like, I was just at my daughter's dance recital last weekend, and the one he's describing is exactly the same. So I came home and told my wife, I was like, hey, they talked about Next Step Dance Studio on the podcast, and she's like, what's the name of the host again? I was like, oh, it's Sean Purry, and she's like, oh, is that Sonia's husband? And I was like,
What?
I was like, you know them? So it turns out he must live in the area somewhere. I just thought that was so funny. But that's a great
Dude,
podcast. I've enjoyed those guys, and I definitely get a lot out of it.
you got to get on that podcast. That new life goal. Get Cameron
There
Page
you
on
go.
the My First Million show.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
yeah.
Those are both good recs. Man, this has been fun, Cameron. Thanks for taking time with us. I think you've kind of interlaced some advice to the next generation throughout the show, but
Mhm.
speak to that next generation, young PM, young superintendent. Maybe they're grinding at the project level, a little bit frustrated with the lack of tech adoption happening, or maybe they're tech saturated and they're kind of over it.
Yeah.
And what's your message to them?
That's a good question on the being kind of over it phase. I could definitely empathize with. I mean, there's a lot to look at. There's, as we talked about, there's a million different things to explore with AI. Both are industry specific and industry agnostic. I think a lot of companies you're going to get a lot out of industry agnostic tools. I hate to say it, but I can only imagine what I would be doing with ChatGPT or some industry agnostic tools if I was still a PM. But I also think there's tons of great AI focused tools specifically for our industry, and those are only going to get better. Just like the models are going to get better, so is the tooling layer on top of them. And so if I was that PM, I would just be patient. I would really try and build a framework for how you want to think about tools that you're going to adopt, right? It's what's going to provide me the big enough value for the lowest amount of implementation headache and adoption and cost. I would put all those in and then weigh it against, the expected value. And I do think if for young PMs, PEs, you know, treat learning these tools just like you do learning the industry. And that's going to make you invaluable at these companies. They're going to want people who understand these things foundationally, even if your plan is to stay in operations. Having this knowledge and this foundation of how these things work is just going to make you more dynamic in your career. It's going to make you more sophisticated when you're talking to your clients, and it's just going to broaden your perspective as a whole. So I guess that's what I would say on my side. And then on the personal side too is, if there are people out there listening that are looking to take the leap or vibe code their next side project, and vibe coding it is easier. Taking it to market, raising capital is another challenge that AI hasn't really made easier yet. I'm happy to talk to people. So, people can find me on LinkedIn, reach out. I'm happy to spread the word and help wherever I can.
Yeah, I love it. Lars, any final thoughts?
No, you asked him two questions, and since you give me a hard time with my hard questions at the end,
I gave you a minute. All right. Well, hey, Cameron,
oh
thanks
my
for your
God,
time, man. This was fun.